carbon dioxide, just like it is in mammals. They do have a thermal regulation function, which deals with water conservation, is also a function of the respiratory system. And they do have a non-respiratory function that involves vocalization. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the upper respiratory tract, and then we're going to move down into the lower respiratory tract. Up on the screen I've got a basic diagram of what the respiratory system looks like, and we're going to start and go through each basic component of the system. We're going to explain what it is, what its main function is, and a little bit about its structure. And then after that, just so you realize just how unique and special the bird's respiratory system is, we're going to compare that with mammals, which would include humans. As you can read up here, these are the basic components of the respiratory system that we're going to discuss. And we're going to start with the nasal cavity, which is basically the beginning of the respiratory system. This is where the air will enter the respiratory tract. Birds can breathe through both their nose and their mouth, just like we can. This is actually a body temperature. Now, if this air were to be expelled at body temperature, all the water condensation that was collected as it went down the respiratory system would be lost. So these nasal conchae, by increasing the amount of surface area that the air has to flow through, it cools it down and water condensates, therefore conserving water. As you can imagine, this is vital for desert birds who probably have no source of water other than maybe their food stuff or oxidative metabolism of it, and also migratory birds. The main limiting factor for distances of long-distance nonstop flight is water. So this is how birds are able to survive in desert habitats, and also how they're able to migrate long distances without any water source. So air comes in through the nasal cavity, it passes through the nasopharynx into the oropharynx, which is the back of their mouth, and then it's going to go through the larynx, which is the structure that you see right here. Here is the opening, which is the glottis. The larynx has muscles which control the glottis by opening and closing it, and the main function is to prevent extraneous particles from entering the lower respiratory tract. And then that connects directly into the trachea. The trachea is probably my favorite part of the respiratory system. I know that sounds so weird, but there's just so many cool things about it. Birds have complete tracheal rings that are almost osteophyte in some species, and they're actually broad at one end and narrow at the other, sort of like a signet ring, and they actually interlock. And this comparable-sized mammal. And when I say comparable-sized mammal, I would be comparing maybe, say, an Amazon to like a guinea pig. So it would be a mammal of the same size, because obviously a horse's trachea is going to be significantly longer than a rat's. So the same with a bird. A crane's going to have a much longer trachea than a parrot. So I will say comparable-sized mammal quite a bit. Now, having a longer trachea, when you bring air into the respiratory system, it's going to increase the resistance significantly, which would be very difficult for the birds to deal with. So to compensate for this, their tracheas are also about 1.3 times wider. So they have a significantly longer and wider trachea than that of mammals. We're going to talk a lot more about the trachea. cervical lining of trachea, cervicular, these are the lungs, how they're dorsal, they're located towards the back, and anterior thoracic, posterior thoracic, and the abdominal air sacs. Basically, air sacs are thin membranous sacs that are poorly vascularized. They do not participate in gas exchange. And they do comprise about a little bit over 50% of the volume in the respiratory system. And what they do is they act as bellows to draw the air into the lungs. Okay, so the respiratory mechanics are a little bit different talk a little bit more in detail about the respiratory mechanisms and the muscles involved, air volumes, the pathways, and then we're going to compare the gas exchange areas between the birds and the okay, so back to my favorite trachea. As we mentioned before, birds have complete cartilaginous rings. Again, we have the broad and the narrow, and they interlock. Now, humans or mammals also have cartilage in their trachea. However, it forms a C-shape, which you can see right here. This is the cartilage in the trachea, and the posterior end has a trachealis muscle. So, birds have more support in their trachea, which makes sense because their trachea is longer and wider. And also, this allows you to restrain birds or carry them around their neck. A lot of the herons and egrets that I've worked with, I'd actually hold them around their neck and carry them. And when I worked with Dr. Backus in Florida, we used to usually be new bird owners, and they'd come in and I'd be holding the bird in the towel or something, and I'd have my fingers around his neck, and it looked like I was choking the bird. And the people would always be looking at Dr. Backus like,
its wings. And that gives it all the lift it requires. Silence is not as important for the kestrel as it is for the barn owl, for it hunts by sight.